Hello, Jerry. Jerry, did you hear anything about Gerald Conlon
I have not.
this past weekend?
No, I have not.
Okay.
He,
okay. Did he get your mask delivered to you?
Yeah, he did that Monday afternoon, I believe it was, right after the meeting. Yeah. But I haven't heard anything. And of course, you're aware of
okay.
Chuck. Okay. All right. And you're aware of Chuck Frederickson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I knew Chuck had passed.
Okay.
He's been ill for a while. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, Chris Beck.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Cold, snowy, but.
Well, you're not quite as cold as we are, but yes, it is cold.
You're right. You chose to move north.
There's Mom.
Yep. She's coming on.
Hello.
Morning.
Hello, Chad.
Hopefully everyone's been getting their masks. Karen, have you heard on any people out for delivery or any difficulties?
I haven't heard of difficulties. I've heard people have delivered the masks, but I have not heard anybody who had difficulties contacting anyone. I'll put out an email a bit later and ask if anyone has not received yet their mask.
I have one left, so I still have one left to deliver, but try to get that one today.
I got mine done before the weather turned cold.
Good idea.
Hi, Karen. This is Captain Lenny. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay.
Yes, we
We
can.
have our video off. Okay, great. We'll get our video going here once we get further into the program, or before you guys do the introductions. We'll get that turned on. But we are on and ready to roll.
Captain Lenny, is the entire squad going to be on too? Your command squad?
That is correct. Yep. We'll have our commanders or the supervisors of the divisions in here. So probably about 7 people total.
How many?
I would say about 7 total.
Perfect.
Or 6.
So
We're missing
you
one
can-
today, so it'll be 6.
All right, so either you or the sheriff will introduce the command staff.
Yep, that's correct.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Well, it's 12:02, so I think we'll go ahead and get started, and I'm sure there will be people who will continue to join us. Maybe people are just moving a little more slow on the day like this when it's this cold outside. But welcome everyone to the February 8th meeting of the Rotary Club of Ames. As always, we will start our virtual meeting with a virtual Pledge of Allegiance. You'll see the flag on your screen. If you're able, please stand and help recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And also, when we start off our meetings, we always make a point to recognize those in our family, Rotary family, that might need an extra thought or prayer. And announcing today that we're aware now that Chuck Frederickson passed away on February 3rd. So our thoughts and prayers go out to Chuck's family. He passed away at the Israel Hospice House. It sounds like a celebration of life is pending later in 2021. So Chuck was a member of our club for many years and had resigned just a few years ago. So we keep Chuck Frederickson's family in our thoughts and prayers. I'm not aware of others. Is there others that you are aware of? Anyone, feel free to unmute and let us know if there's someone else we should be thinking of at this time. If not, let's just take a moment for Chuck and his family, and also just in general for each other, a moment of silence. Thank you. And our music committee, here today to represent would be John Christie, and John is going to unmute and kick off our meeting with a welcome song for those who might be joining us as visitors.
Thanks, Chad. And hi, everyone. To our guests and visitors, welcome to you from Ames Rotary, Nevada, London, or Gay Paris, from far off lands or the USA. We're glad that you are here today. Come back again whenever you're near. Join us and then we'll make it clear. Around the world you will always be. Welcome at Rotary.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. A couple of other announcements. Last week we talked about this. Gene Cressy told us about an opportunity to become a volunteer driver. So there are people who need transportation to medical appointments, and I think in particular here, potentially some vaccine appointments. So there's an opportunity. Rather than create a separate entity to coordinate a group of volunteer drivers, we actually will have several opportunities here if you can sign up directly at the RSVP services site, which is on the screen there. So emailing someone or signing up at www.rsvvolunteer.org as well. As a reminder, that opportunity is out there. Also, just a reminder that we are out there delivering Centennial face masks. Hopefully most of you have received those, and if not, you will be receiving them shortly. If you're looking for a model, I think Glenn Ripke is sporting his, if that's the right one. So that's what they look like. So you should be getting those shortly. Thankful to the group of people who are helping distribute those. And just today, and hopefully maybe sometime in the future, just wanted to let you all know that it's been suggested that without having some in-person fellowship opportunities over meal, that maybe it would be good to use our meeting time and extend that a little bit. So maybe we're going to keep this Zoom meeting open for about 15 minutes afterwards. And for those of you who would like to please stay connected, and we would have an opportunity to fellowship with one another. Hopefully the demand is so high that we need to create breakout rooms in smaller groups, but we're just going to play that by ear. So today, and maybe sometime in the future, Karen's going to keep this meeting open, so feel free to stick around for some small talk and some fellowship opportunities. Are there any other announcements that I am missing? Because that's kind of what I had for today. Okay.
Chad, if I
Jeff?
Yeah, if I could,
Yeah.
I want to remind everyone, whether you receive your mask or not, the goal is to wear these on March 1st, just for a small moment in celebration of our actual centennial. Since we won't have a live get-together until sometime in September, we do want to acknowledge on March 1st that it is the actual date of our centennial celebration. But we encourage everyone to wear their mask.
Thank you, Jeff. Forgot about that, but that's very important as well. So let's do that and celebrate of our beginning of our next century of service. And our meeting today, we're actually going to have Liz Beck unmute and introduce our program for the day. Go ahead, Liz.
Thank you, Chad. So today's program is the Story County Sheriff's Department. When I first invited Sheriff Fitzgerald, it didn't work for him to be on the date that we had selected. So Captain Nicholas Linney was going to be our program chair, and our program today, but we had to switch the date. So Captain Linney graciously gave up his slot so that Sheriff Fitzgerald can give us the program today. And as I understand it, the sheriff will have the rest of some of his command staff online with us. So Sheriff Fitzgerald was first elected in 1992 as our sheriff, and he's now beginning his 8th term. Prior to being elected, he worked for the Waterloo Police Department for 15 years. He has received his master's degree in criminal justice from St. Ambrose University and his bachelor's degree in law enforcement from Wartburg. He is active on as many boards and committees, both locally and nationally. He served as the past president of the National Sheriff's Association from 2011 to 2012. And he is chairman on the Department of, I think it's Homeland Security, Sheriff, you can correct me on that, and the CISA Emergency Services Sector Coordinating Council, as well as the Story County E911 Service Board. He manages a staff of about 90 sworn and civilian personnel. And if we're all ready, Captain Lenny, we can start. So thank you for coming and being our program today.
Thank you for the introduction, Ms. Beck. I'll start it off here, Sheriff Fitzgerald. We at the Sheriff's Office, to give you an idea what a Sheriff's Office does and how it differs a little bit perhaps from other law enforcement agencies, is we do have patrol. We consider ourselves a full service organization by not only having patrol, but we have detectives, drug task force. We have other services such as jail, communications, and dispatch. We have support services, which also provides our Citizens Academy, and also where our reserve program, Sheriff's Reserve Program, answers to. One of the important things and distinctions that sets a sheriff aside is that a sheriff is what is called an arm of the court. And so anytime the court gives an order for something to be carried out, it's the sheriff that does that. It's not a city police, it's not the state police, it's the county sheriff. An example of that would be perhaps when you see an eviction happening at Iowa State at the end of a quarter and the landlord gets his property back and the person hasn't moved out, it's the sheriff that's doing that eviction, not the Iowa State Police and not the Ames Police. So we work with the court in that area. Another area that sets us aside is we also house the only jail in the county, and I think that's the way it is through all 99 counties now. There are some counties that are small enough they don't have a jail and they share with a neighboring county. But anyway, those are the main things that we do with Story County that have some similarities and differences. Here at the Sheriff's Office, we also have some other areas that we do that the other agencies around here do not, such as we have a dive team. Whenever there's somebody drowns or in the water, we have a search and recovery or search and rescue. We also have an unmanned aerial drone force, you might say, and we have 6 drones that we use varying in sizes. We also have an emergency response team, like a SWAT team, and then a hostage negotiation unit. So those are some of the things that we have, but I know we're limited in time a little bit, so what I'd like to do is introduce my command staff and then go around and let them say a little bit about what they do in their specific division. With us today, first and foremost, I have my Chief Deputy, Captain Nick Lenny. Then we have in support services, representing Lieutenant Gary Backus today, is Sergeant Elizabeth Quinn. Then in communications, we have acting communication commander Nick Brazinio. Then we have in field services division, which oversees patrol, detectives, and drug task force, is Commander Lieutenant Leanna Ellis. And then the jail services is run by Commander John Osmussen. So with that, I will turn it over to Captain Lenny and let him speak from here.
Thank you. I think I will pass the buck right away and get right into our divisions and let them speak individually about their division, the structure of their division, kind of the main responsibilities, and when we come back around to the end, if there's anything to finish up on, I'll jump in at that point. So I'll send it to Sergeant Elizabeth Quinn. She's here representing Commander Backus for the Support Services Division.
Good morning. So essentially, I oversee 4 clerical who do all the civil processing out front and the record keeping as far as financials. We also oversee the sex offender registry. We have a little over 100 registered sex offenders in Story County that we keep accountable. We also do all the gun permit applications in which we've seen an influx recently with the pandemic. So as far as numbers for 2020, we did a little over 2,000, and the year before that, we had done just over 1,000. So we had an increase of 1,000 last year that we have been working on. Also in my division, support services, we also have 2 civil deputies that I oversee that also do all the civil processing. Because of the pandemic, we have seen a decline a little bit in paper service, as you can imagine, with you know, the governor's proclamation allowing for there to be waivers in regard to evictions and stuff like that. And then we also do Citizens Academy out of support services, which we had to put on hold last year. And we also do our internship program, which we have just gotten more active in again, and I'm still doing that. And so with that, that essentially is what the support services is made up of. And then with that, I'll go on to the next commander.
Good morning. My name's Nick, and I oversee the communications division and the 12 dispatchers that we have working at any given time that oversee all of the Sheriff's Office administrative lines, our 7 911 lines, both wired and wireless, and then also answer the administrative lines for Huxley Police, Nevada Police, and Story City Police. On top of that, we dispatch for all of those agencies, both administrative and emergency calls, and the 13 fire and EMS agencies outside of Ames jurisdiction. So basically, if you call into the Sheriff's Office, we're the ones who take your calls. We have members on most of the special teams, or at least part of the special teams. I also sit on the partner team for the Sheriff's Office to which is an active response unit for missing abducted children or other emergency responses, and work intimately with agencies like Emergency Management, Ames Police and their communications divisions, and ISU Police and their communications divisions. So I guess I can pass it on to Lieutenant Ellis.
Hi, so my name is Leanna Ellis, and I am the commander of the Field Services Division. As the sheriff had stated, the Field Services Division consists of patrol, investigations, and the Drug Task Force. Within my division, there's 23 sworn staff, 18 of which work on patrol over 3 shifts, 24/7, and then I have 5 investigators. 2 are part of the Central Iowa Drug Task Force, which is a multi-agency task force. 2 are general criminal investigators, and 1 is assigned to an FBI task force, violent gang task force, that's also multi-county coverage. I understand that you're a little interested in how the pandemic affected the way that we provided services, and I can tell you that on patrol early on, we tried to make some changes on how we responded, such as taking more calls for service over the phone where we could. Anytime we did respond to somebody's residence, we tried to get information instead of going inside the residence, having people filing a report come outside. Of course, obviously practicing the social distancing and face coverings as much as we could when practical. Initially, early on, we did limit some of the proactive patrols, such as traffic stops. And I think you've probably seen news coverage where that had an effect, where there's quite a few more speeders out there. So we have beefed back up our traffic enforcement. And other than that, too, it seemed early on that our calls for service as it relates to, it seemed like crime had dropped initially early on. We didn't have the number of calls for service for burglaries and those kind of things. However, we did see an increase in child abuse and sexual assault cases, child sexual assault cases early on in the pandemic. It seems that things are starting to kind of go back to regular calls for service as businesses and schools and things are getting back more to normal as it stands. And of course, I'd take any questions after Commander Osmussen shares about the jail.
Good morning. My name is John Addison. I'm the jail administrator here at the Story County Sheriff's Office. Our jail is a 122-bed facility. I have 40 jail staff and 5 medical staff that are contracted that all work in the jail. Right now, our average daily population usually sits around 85. One of our first steps when COVID hit was to try to get out as many people as, the lower crimes, to get them out of jail. So we met with the judges, and a lot of people like that can actually go out on street probation or on pretrial release. So we worked with them, and we were able to get our population down under 50, so we can less people that are going to be exposed to the pandemic. Another thing that we do here in the jail is that we are responsible for all aspects of care and keep for all the inmates. So we provide mental health services, we provide medical services, we provide programming, daily activities, feed. We also do all of our own cleaning inside in the house, as well as all the kitchen duties. Everything are all done in the jail itself. And I see there was a question about tracking the demographics. We do have our booking packages. We take booking information, but as to actually tracking anybody on, we do not do that. Yeah. And then training-wise, I think we do, what's our new?
Yeah, we do training on implicit bias, de-escalation. We're constantly monitoring our policies, making sure they fall within national standards, and we train to our policies as well. There was a question, I believe, from Gene on there as far as tracking ethnicity and what type of training we provide for equity and racism.
We, the bias training, I had my first taste of implicit bias training when I was at the Waterloo Police Department. And we brought in a presenter, C.T. Vivian, came to Waterloo and trained, and all officers had to go through this training for an entire day. And it was very unique and very intense, something I can say that we never experienced at that time. But he certainly put us through our paces. Then when I became sheriff in Story County, I believe it was in probably the late 2007, 2008, we had Edna Clinton come into the sheriff's office, and she gave implicit bias training to our staff at that time. And then this past summer, we had a doctor from Iowa State University. Liz, do you remember his name? No. I can't think right offhand. He came in and gave training not only to the sheriff's office staff that we arranged, but we invited other law enforcement agencies and other county employee staff as well. And so we used Gates Hall in Nevada that would hold a large enough audience, and we went through that process.
They're asking about mental health. There's a question on here asking about mental health and if mental health calls have increased for us. We'll let Administrator John Osmussen take that.
Inside the jail right now, we average, I think, probably close to 45 to 50% of our population have either an ongoing mental health diagnosis or co-occurring with substance abuse. So we take that very seriously. We have 2 programming personnel that actually handle most of our drug and mental health programming, as well as our nurse, and then we also have an on-call telepsych we can use as well, and we also have a mental health social worker that comes in twice a week for about 4 hours each week to actually meet with inmates as well.
I'll talk about vaccinations here.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and do the vaccinations?
This is Captain Lenny. We have a question up here asking about the plan for vaccinations for our staff. We actually have started vaccinating our staff as of last week. We've been working very closely with the Story County Board of Health and Les White to get that arranged. Most of our staff do fall within the 1B category, and then they have the 1B category tiered out into 5 different tiers, as most of you probably are aware of. And so, according to that plan and the priorities that they set on those tiers, we have been sending our staff over to get the vaccinations. So far, that seems to be going smooth. We have a number yet to get vaccinated. I know our correctional staff and inmates are in that 1B group, but they fall down in the tier 5 group. So we anticipate that's going to be a little bit with the shortage of supply on the vaccines currently. And so we're working through that, but yes, we are working on getting vaccinated.
I have another question. I have a question here that was posed in the chat here about diversity amongst your team. Outside of gender diversity, what other types of representation do you have amongst your staff in terms of a diversity that might more mirror, a community that you serve?
Well, I do believe it's important that we mirror the community we serve. However, we have a little bit of disadvantage in certain areas. In all of our recruitments, we work very hard to bring in minorities all across the board in the jail, in the patrol division, in the support services, in communications, in every aspect of the sheriff's office. But what we find, being a rural area that's pretty prominently white, what we have is we have people who could be potential candidates. Well, when it comes time for the job offering, they will go to Ames or Iowa State University, where that does have a little bit more of a cultural diversity. We have one black in the jail right now that works there. One of the women I hired a few years ago, Janelle Malone, she was hired as a detention officer. She was later promoted to supervisor. And then after I promoted her to supervisor, I brought in a program called VINE, Victim Information Notification Every Day. I asked her to be in charge of that. Then when we got that up and running, we had the Attorney General come up and look at it. He liked it so much, he wrote a program or a grant. So every county in Iowa has that. And then he hired Janelle away from me to go down and run it at the state level. She's now the director of the Crime Victim Assistance Division, of which I'm one of the board of directors on. But we work at it, but the results, we've reached out to Edna Clinton in the past, and we've reached out to the Des Moines chapter of the NAACP to give us ideas or to help us find minorities in this area. We feel we have a destination sheriff's office where we don't have a lot of turnover. Our patrol people, the only time there's advancements there is when somebody retires. So it's we have a good crew, we have a steady crew, and anybody that can give us any suggestions, any assistance in bringing in minorities into the office, we would love to hear and have that discussion with them.
Thank you. I have a couple of other questions here just before they get buried. The current sex offender registry, has there been a trend up or down in numbers? And then what % are male compared to female individuals on the registry? And are there trends about age and race demographics as well that you could speak to?
Sergeant Quinn?
Yeah, so overall, very good question. Like I said, we have a little over 100 sex offenders on our registry. As far as being able to essentially state with the demographics and all that, I wasn't prepared to speak to that, so I don't know exactly how many men we do have to women and what the ages are. But what I can tell you is that we have not had a rise as far as how many people are required to register. It's stayed the same. for the past couple of years. But I'd be more than happy to gather that information and provide that to you.
Thank you.
In Story County,
Thank you.
In Story County with sex offenders, law is that we have to verify their information and where they live annually. In the sheriff's office, we do it quarterly. So a deputy will have a face-to-face with a sex offender in the county. Now, the city of Ames has a requirement to verify the sex offenders, although this is where they register. A good percentage of those live in Ames or in the Iowa State University area, and so they have to be checked upon by the Ames Police Department. But we do quarterly here at the sheriff's office for those living in the county, basically outside of Ames.
Thank you. Another question was about, let's see, are you concerned with the significant increase in gun permits?
Well, the real increase in gun permits began in 2011. And that was when the law at the state changed and Iowa went from a may state to a shall state. And what that means is back then, the sheriff had the sole discretion whether to give a permit to an individual or not. Now that we are a shall state, the sheriff has to give a permit unless he can hang turning down the individual's reason on a federal disclaimer. Now, what the difference between those differences are is the sheriff going along with the information from my staff. I know when I have somebody that my task force is working on a drug investigation and has been doing an undercover investigation on them for 6, 8, 9 months. Now, if that person comes in for a gun permit, I just can't deny him. I got to give him a written reason why he's being denied. So I can choose to do one or two things. Give him a gun permit and allow the investigation to continue, or turn him down and then give him the reasons that we're investigating you for manufacturing methamphetamine or sale or whatever. So that's one. We also know domestic violence is a huge issue that we work with very closely. Now, on a situation like that, an individual may have been, officers may have gone out to the house several times for domestic violence, but if that person has never been arrested or was arrested and then the wife later dropped, or the significant other dropped charges, then I no longer can deny that person a permit. Another issue that we've had that came up, and I spoke about this all the way up to in the White House, was this law also, when we have mental health reasons that we deny somebody a permit for, what happens after the law changed, we had an individual come from another county and move to Story County. They come in to get their permit, and we do a NICS check, National Instant Criminal Background Check. And the NICS check came back, individual has suicidal tendencies. So my staff says, well, Sheriff, what do we do here? I said, deny him. I'm not going to issue a permit there. They said, we can't do that anymore. We got to be able to verify other things. So we called the county where he came from, and that county, the county attorney there said, well, because of HIPAA, we can't give you that information, but you better look into this guy before you give him a permit. And so I called our county attorney in the state of Iowa, and they said, sorry, Sheriff, the way the law is, you got to give him a permit. So these are some of the things that we, I have about 6 of those right now, I believe was the last count, where we have the next check comes back subject to suicidal tendencies. But our hands are tied, and we got to go by what the law says.
And then another question for you, Sheriff. What issues keep you up at night?
Well, I was listening one day to a speech in D.C., and it was by the then Chief of Police of Los Angeles. And he was telling his Rotary Club that he goes to bed every night knowing that his future and his career rest in the hands of 1,200 armed 25-year-olds. So we look at the people, we have our staff, we ensure that they have the appropriate background when we do our hiring. We ensure training, and we follow up with that training. We have policies and procedures, and we also have what is called a code of conduct. One of few agencies have a code of conduct, and we hold our people to that as well. I guess there's so many things I could say what keeps you up at night. Right now, the COVID and keeping that out of the jail, keeping it away from my staff, and how do I make my people as safe as possible. Even though the emphasis has turned to COVID, the active shooter situations had dropped for a while, but now we see they're inching back up and coming back in again. So we train and we prepare as best we can so we can be out there to protect ourselves and to protect the public. And it's hard for an officer to be able to protect someone else if they first can't protect themselves. That's why we use education and training. That's why we buy appropriate equipment, and we make sure that we have our staff equipped to handle most any situation that they may come across. Any other comments?
No.
And then I think we're caught up here in the chat. The next question from Warren Madden. Discuss the working relationship between the county, the city of Ames, and the ISU law enforcement.
Well, the people in Story County have a lot to be proud of, I think. We have 3 professional, top-notch law enforcement agencies that work very well together. In a lot of areas across the country you go to, you'll see different police departments or law enforcement agencies that are more like competing ball teams and working together. But in Story County, we share so much, whether it's areas of training, our communication. We have 3 dispatch areas, one at Iowa State, one at Ames, and one at the Sheriff's Office, and we all operate off the same platform. So what that means, as an example, Iowa State University remodeled their communications offices where they do their dispatching out of. So when they had to be down for a week, their dispatchers came over here, sat down at our councils, and dispatched at Iowa State here. We have had our people go over to Ames and Iowa State and dispatch from those locations when we've had similar problems. But it's something that works real well. It provides redundancy all through the county. We have chiefs meetings where all the chiefs, not only Ames, Iowa State, and Story County, but Nevada, Story City, Huxley, and even the Story County Conservation Director, who has 4 law enforcement officers in conservation. We will meet at least quarterly and to discuss issues in law enforcement within our agencies, what's going on, so we can keep everybody updated. And then also at the Sheriff's Office, since I've been sheriff, I started this January, my 29th year, I brought in where we have a command staff retreat. And that's where all supervisors, all 21 of us, go off-site, usually to McFarland Conservation Center, and we have an all-day retreat. And at those retreats, we invite the chiefs or their representatives from all the law enforcement agencies to set in where we can discuss and they can have access to all my supervisors in all my divisions. Any other comments?
Thank you. Thank you. Another question here from Tom Walsh. What's your leading offense that sends individuals to jail, and what type of drug abuse is most prevalent and concerning at this time?
Well, that's more of a John and Leanna question, I think. John, you want to start off?
I think for what we see the most in the jail is probably going to be misdemeanor alcohol use as well as drug use that we're going to see a lot of. Alcohol, I'd say, probably is number 1 with the university being here and with just the area. I think that's probably the number 1 thing that we see in the jail.
As far as what type of drug abuse is most prevalent and concerning at this time, obviously the highest use and what we see the most of is marijuana. As it's being legalized in surrounding states, we're seeing more and more of it here. It's a lot more readily accessible. I believe that the percentage of youth that is using marijuana has greatly increased, everything from being able to vape THC to edibles and just large quantities of marijuana. As far as drug abuse, though, too, heroin, was definitely on the increase as a result of abuse of prescription medications and people getting hooked on the opiates such as Oxycontin, and then of course turning to a cheaper opiate, which is heroin, and we still see overdoses as a result of that, and so obviously that's very concerning.
Currently, all the deputies and responders in Story County Sheriff's Office carry Narcan with them. We come across somebody who has an opiate overdose, and they can help to revive them if that should be necessary. We also see that drugs are somewhat cyclical, meaning that we always have marijuana at the tip of the spear, but one year we might have heroin where we're seeing a resurgence. A few months later, we might see methamphetamine and then LSD coming back, but all those things just keep coming around. We have a Central Drug Task Force meeting, which involves Story, Boone, Greene, and Webster County that are in our drug task force, and our team make arrests in all those counties, and we chase the drug dealers, and we try to get as much of it as we can.
And then the next question was, what Story County communities does your office provide contract law enforcement services to?
Well, we provide contract law enforcement. First of all, dispatching contracts we have with Nevada, Story City, and Huxley, because they do their own law enforcement. They have their own police departments. In Huxley, they also contract with Cambridge, so Cambridge and Huxley are about 3-4 miles apart, so Huxley covers Cambridge. But apart from that, we have Zering, Colo, Collins, Maxwell, Slater, Sheldall, Kelly, Gilbert, and Roland and McCallsburg are our contracts.
Several.
So we have 10 communities we do contract law enforcement for.
Do you see an increase in people who have ADHD, and do those with ADHD have more common legal challenges, or more legal challenges, I guess I should say?
Well, I don't know that we could necessarily answer that as it pertains to ADHD. I couldn't answer that question.
That's not something we would track specifically when we deal with any individual, whether or not they have ADHD or anything specific. I think more generally we could answer that mental health is prevalent. It does seem like it's increasing. A large population that we deal with do have mental health fights, that they have issues, and so that certainly seems like it's on the rise, and it's very prevalent.
The Story County Mental Health Task Force, it's made up of many elements throughout Story County, from all the mental health providers to the hospitals to the Board of Supervisors, City of Ames. I'm proud to say that was started here in the sheriff's office when I first became elected sheriff. That was one of the things that I campaigned on when I was elected, and with the help of Mary Richards, who was then the county attorney, that was what got what has evolved to the Story County Mental Health Task Force.
How about the derecho this summer? Did that create unexpected work for your team?
Well, that's just another thing in 2020 we're trying to forget about. But it certainly did. We couldn't even spell derecho then, and then we were hit by one, and it pretty much devastated us like it did everyone else in the county. It was very heartwarming to see all the public throughout the county coming together, neighbor helping neighbor, and doing everything we can. We have one of the things we have in the sheriff's office is an MRAP, a big military vehicle, and we even took that up to Roland, and we were pulling large trees off of buildings that the city asked us to come up and help with. And so, I mean, it was just amazing to see all the damage and destruction, and try to imagine, especially the farming communities, if you drove through the rural areas, especially in the northern part of the county. I've never, I've seen tornadoes and things like this, but I've never seen such a wide area of destruction of entire crops, entire fields just laid to the ground. It was truly amazing.
And to make matters worse, during that time, our communication system, our radio system, suffered some damage, and so we had no radio communication with our dispatch or with other officers, including the Verizon towers, I think, had some major issues. And so as that storm was happening and immediately afterwards, we were inundated with calls. And it was a unique challenge for us to respond to those calls because we weren't getting dispatched in the traditional means. We had to find other ways to communicate, other ways to get there. So we had a lot of vehicles, especially on the interstate, in the ditch, semis tipped over. Obviously, every community was impacted. So we had medical calls, there were some fire calls. It seemed like we're going everywhere at that point in time. And so for the immediate few days, it did affect our office more so than it did long term. I know that the rest of that evening, we kept personnel out on the road and assigned a deputy to every single town that we patrol for, and just kept them there into the evening hours to make sure all the needs were met.
If there was any luck at all in that entire thing, it just happened that my emergency response team, like the SWAT team, was training that day. So as soon as the derecho began to hit, I redirected them from training to come back into a full duty status. And when it subsided enough for our people to go outside in it, then they responded and split up through the county and made sure every community and we could respond to calls as best we could. We had power lines down all over the county roads, it seemed like, and people couldn't move because of that, and just other type of emergencies that we tried to get covered and get responded to.
And then this must be a follow-up question on the gun permit processes. So based on the current processes, are there efforts by law enforcement to help educate Iowa legislators on the current challenges in the current permitting system?
We have, we belong to what's called the Iowa State Sheriffs and Deputies Association. And they have a legislative committee who my Sergeant Elizabeth Quinn sits on that committee. I've been down there right after the law was changed and testified in front of one of the congressional hearings on the concealed weapons permits. And I don't know, Liz, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, just to piggyback on what the sheriff is saying, we work very closely with legislators as well as the Department of Public Safety. And as you know, timing is everything. So we'll continue to work on that to see how we can improve the legislation.
There is a bill that is coming out, if I'm correct on this, correct me if I'm not, Elizabeth, that they have taken a vote and they're going to put it on the ballot to the people in Iowa in 2022, I believe. And that will change the Iowa Constitution, which will mean then anybody, for any reason, can carry a gun. So I'm concerned about that. I think other law enforcement officers are concerned about that as well. I think that's going to be more of, should that happen, and a person no longer needs a permit to carry and no way to track or register or anything, then anybody who wants to carry a firearm, just strap it on and go, whether concealed or not. Is that correct?
Yes.
Looks like somebody is also asking about your view of legalizing marijuana.
Anybody want to take that? First of all, with our drug task force, that's one of the things that we mentioned earlier is highest among all the drugs. It's a continued use. I understand that there's arguments on both sides of this issue. Some say that from a law enforcement perspective that it's very dangerous, it's a gateway drug, it's going to lead to other things, and you're still going to have the people out there driving and getting high, and that's a little harder to detect than it is somebody who's been drinking. The other side of the argument is it's compared to prohibition, and when they relieve prohibition, they could take funding, if that would be the case with marijuana, and put it into rehabilitation areas to help people get treatment, which is where you find the best recovery or treatment for those with addictions. But this is an area that I guess I fall back on. The state sets the laws, the Supreme Court interprets those laws, and then we enforce those laws as interpreted by the court.
Thank you. And then what are the ranks or titles in your office, starting from the top down?
I'm the sheriff, and from there it goes. My chief deputy has the rank of captain. Then I have 4 standalone divisions, and each division has a commander, and I call them commanders because of the 4 divisions, there are 2 that are sworn, that are sheriffs, Leanna Ellis, who oversees field services, and Lieutenant Gary Backus, who oversees support services, where Sergeant Quinn is out of. And then my jail commander and my communications commander are both civilians. But all 4 have equal standing within the sheriff's office. So if myself and my chief deputy are out of state at the time on various meetings, which occasionally happens, we rotate, and one of those will be in charge of the office when I'm gone. It doesn't have to be a sworn person that does that. I also have my administrative assistant, Connie Torresdal, who's off today, but she also shares that equal standing as well. Then from there, each division commander has down the ranks either supervisors and or sergeants that work for them, and then under the sergeants, the deputies or the civilian staff, and under that, well, we also have volunteers and other professionals that come and work within the sheriff's office.
Thank you. And this seems to be a really good question for us to end on. We certainly appreciate your time and what you do for us. But this question from Jeff Johnson here, what could the community do? The one best thing that we could do to support your operation, what would that one thing be?
Well, what I would say is attend our Citizens Academy. Ames Police Department has a Citizens Academy. Iowa State did it one time. I don't know if they still do. And then we have a Citizens Academy as well. Bantering back and forth with Ames, I say going to the Ames Academy is like going to the undergraduate, and then you come to the sheriff's office and we give you the graduate Citizens Academy. But they're both excellent academies, and you get to interact. And the reason I say that, that's probably the best thing that we have, is because there's so much out there that you go into a coffee club or something, and I hear the sheriff has 100 deputies and the sheriff's doing all this. Well, that's not the case. This gives everybody accurate information. And as soon as they go through the academy, then they're able to be an ambassador for the sheriff's office. And when they're in those conversations, they can say, no, I've been there. I spent several weeks at the sheriff's office learning about it, and this is what the real facts are. And it takes so much of that mystique about what's going on in your government agencies that it allows you to be more informed. And we also get quite a few volunteers that come back to the sheriff's office and working either out at the range doing upkeep and mowing and some things like that, or working in the jail with visitation for inmates and doing some of our copying and recording for our justice or our records and jail management systems. And they really come and play an integral part. Last year in my budget presentation, I presented that our volunteer hours that we have saved us 2.5 full-time employees, which would be about $150,000 that the work they do has saved the taxpayers in Story County. So if you want to get involved, reach out to your law enforcement agency, and if they aren't providing one, we are. The only complaint I've ever had from anybody is that they told me they were thinking of failing it so they could come back and do it again. So it's a good program, and feel free to contact us. We're online. You can go to the Story County Sheriff's Office website, see the Citizens Academy application, fill one out, and send it in, and we'll be in contact with you.
Thank you so much. That Citizens Academy, there you have it, Club. Seems like a great way to be appropriately informed. Sheriff and team of commanders, thank you so much for joining us today. We know how busy you are, but we also know how challenging your job is. So round of applause from the Rotary Club of Ames and all that you do. We appreciate that. Not all of us have that much risk in our vocations on a daily basis. So we also appreciate your bravery, your dedication, and out there keeping us safe and keeping others out of harm's way. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you for having us, and we're available for any future programs you'd need, if you care to see our drone program or whatever. But I just want to close my end by saying how proud I am of the men and women who work at the Story County Sheriff's Office. A lot of people look at me, but it's those folks that are providing the service, that are out there working with the public and keeping everyone safe. And I couldn't be more prouder of such a professional group that we have here. So thank you again for having us and letting us speak to you today.
Thank you very much. Now, Club, we will close our regular meeting here with our four-way test. But like we said in the beginning, we're going to go ahead and keep the meeting open for a few minutes. If someone would want to hang around and hang out, that'd be awesome. So with that, let's all recite our four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? So thank you, everyone. We'll give it a few minutes to see how many want to hang out.
Yep, and those that want to, just to have a chat, go ahead and unmute.
We're down to 21 of our closest friends here of the club.
Chad, what's the status of going back to having, in-person meetings? Is that still being discussed at all among the leadership?
Great question, Warren. Our board is not going to meet in February, but I think we're all hopeful as a leadership team that sometime this summer or through this transition from one year to the next that we might be able to resume. I know that you're all aware we tried to this fall. I think there just wasn't enough people who felt safe enough to go ahead and get together, and we were looking at maybe a box lunch format there at the Gateway. So I think our goal would be that as the vaccinations get distributed and we continue to monitor progress, that we would hope to be able to resume this summer.
This is Louis Bennett. I like this idea. Our retired docs group has about 30 on the email list, but we usually have about 12 to 15 every Monday morning at 8 o'clock. And people look forward to it regularly because we just don't have a chance to get together as a group in any other way. And this is a good idea, I think, for this reason. Commonly, we sit at the same table in our case, by design, because for the music, we sit close to the front. But we don't mix enough, I think. And personally, at our meetings, I would like to see us have more mixing at our regular meetings when we're finally meeting in person.
Yeah.
I just have a question of those that stayed on, and you don't have to answer it, or you can raise your hand. I know that there's quite a few of you, you don't have your cameras on, but I'm just curious, how many have had the COVID vaccine, at least one shot? So good, good. How many have had the second shot? Fabulous. So I think as we see that change in our community, I think we will be more apt to say, let's try some social distancing, but in the same room. But I think that that's encouraging to see so many of you.
Chad, everyone, this is Cliff Smith. I wonder if you could consider continuing the Zoom even when you start meeting. I find that I'm moving around less easily these days, and I might find it difficult to come over for the dinner, but I'd sure like to continue participating in the meeting in some way, if I choose not.
That's a good one, because not just for your situation, but there's a lot of people that travel for work, and there's actually a population, right, that just can't get out of their jobs on a Monday at noon. So, people that we seem to be missing as we look at maybe the demographics of our club. And there's other clubs that are doing maybe some evening, once, maybe twice a month evening clubs, but they're still, for example, Rotary Club of Ames, but they might have just a different meeting time for the same reason. But I think the hybrid meetings, as I guess we'd call them, where we still have that opportunity to record these and also have a Zoom presence would be good. So I agree, Cliff, that would be good if we could do that. But we're missing, like, teachers, for example. We seem to have less connection with Ames High, with Gilbert High, things like that. If we could get a couple, I think, business teachers or people that do hold service near and dear to them and would want to be a part of this, that would be great to have some other opportunities for them to join us too. But I think that's a great idea, Cliff, if we could do that.
I can tell you that our retired docs group, with the dozen that we have, 2 of them are in Arizona and 1 is in Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah, anybody can live where it's sunny and warm all the time. It takes us characters to live where it's nice and chilly. We used to call people like that wimps, right?
I was wondering too.
A day like this.
I was wondering maybe too, if, during this COVID era and the Zoom era, this might support membership too by providing this continuation of Zoom meetings. And I was also curious, what's been the impact in terms of Rotary membership during this time? Are the numbers about the same, or has there been a decline?
Membership has been fairly constant right now. Each year when we have a transition from one Rotary year to the next, we do have this point in time where we kind of take a census, so to speak, and we pay our dues to Rotary International based on that. So we do have we had a bit of attrition when we switched during the summer. I don't think we could attribute all that to COVID. That's just, kind of what we normally see, but we've added a few members as well. So we've been pretty constant, throughout this year anyway, at least from a COVID perspective. Karen, would you have anything to add to that, or have you seen anything that I'm not aware of?
No, currently we have 172 members. And yeah, we're pretty stable right now, with the membership as it is, but it's also very difficult to recruit members in this day and age, because all we can really do is invite them to our virtual meetings where they really can't meet people and get a feel for the club itself.
Cliff, you mentioned about mobility. I think that, for example, our church has had now these Zoom meetings or Facebook type, for church services. And I think that other people have mentioned that with the older people in the population, this has been a boon for keeping connected in ways and may help to keep people connected longer than what they might otherwise.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
But I'll tell you, it's a bummer for a junior in high school who wanted to have snow days, and now they don't get snow days anymore because they just have to do online school. So those days are long gone now.
It's going to be interesting seeing what happens regarding the school, because I can tell you that a granddaughter is enjoying her, not in person, but about her internet, her not face-to-face classes at the high school that she's having right now in a senior year, and finding it maybe even more effective for her own personal time.
I think what you see is a very, just like the adult population, you'll see a diverse response, because I know that my son really struggles with the online learning, but I know that as I visit with other parents in our Boy Scout troop, they might have one son that's thriving and another one who's really struggling. So I think it does have a lot to do with how people learn, but also, you know, are they introverts or extroverts, and how else can they feel connected also to their friends and community? So I think you would see a lot. And there are some, Louis, like you said, where they really thrive in this environment where they are good, organized people. They can keep track of their assignments and be efficient and get them done. But for others who maybe don't necessarily have that skill set, you know, it's been quite challenging and challenging from a mental health standpoint as well.
Right. One of my friends, a university prof, has done all of his classes online for some time. But I wonder about the students, whether there's going to be a change in student behavior regarding opting for in-person classes versus online classes at the university as well.
Maybe.
Well, if it's a lecture class, and certainly a large lecture class, having it online is about the same as sitting in a large room with 100 other individuals listening to the lecture. There are a lot of hands-on learning that one can do, and that becomes the difficult portion of it.
I agree with them too.
In medicine, Louis, how much of it can you learn online versus hands-on experience?
Now, you mean, or before?
Well, now, yeah.
I don't know.
It seems to me there's a lot of medical information you could get online, but if you're going to have an operation, you better have somebody who's done it before.
I don't know, Cliff, they use the, what's it called? The Da Vinci machine, where it's all done through kind of computers. So the doctor could sit in his home and you could be lying on your kitchen table and they could just do any kind of brain surgery on you. Maybe not.
Yeah,
how do you
probably
get that
in the
my kitchen?
Warren, I wonder, Warren, in your department, whether a fair number of your people that you had before are working from home now and would continue doing that way instead of being at the office.
Yeah, I think, and again, as I've talked with people, I think that could be the outcome. I think we were doing a certain amount of that before COVID, and I think this has just exacerbated it. And I think what it's demonstrated is there are certainly jobs where you can do the work remotely and it works well. I still personally think, and this is just my experience, so there's still some value of people physically getting together. So, a lot of the things I'm seeing is you may see a hybrid where people come in a couple days a week and can maybe work more remotely. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see how this all settles down. You're seeing some of that in the real estate side now. Some of these people have, big office complexes and may not ever go back to having them fully, staffed up. So it's got a lot of ramifications, in big cities about how soon will people come back, because it's not just the offices, it's the restaurants and, hot dog stands and all the things you find around those. If there aren't people in those environments, it's going to change the dynamics. So I think it's going to be a while before we know how this all settles down, assuming we get back to a little more normal.
Yeah, think about how that trickles through even like mass transit, where people are on a train for 45 minutes or an hour a day to get to their job. And then, you know, all of a sudden they don't have to be there every day. And then, you know, they're not as full. And so there's a whole lot of, seems like fingered offshoots that could come from that.
Yeah, I've talked with some Iowa State students who they seem to like this sort of hybrid mix. They've got some courses, as Cliff said, where you're in a large lecture hall, it may be better being taught, you know, remotely. On the other hand, they want to get over there and do the hands-on things. But the ones I've been visiting with seem to think they've got a pretty good balance now. You know, they're living in a residence hall or apartment and they can do the online stuff, and then they go over to campus for labs and some of that. So I think it'll be interesting to see how this all works out and whether faculty get sort of adjusted to teaching that way and be effective. But
our son-in-law, who's a vice president for a bank in Atlanta and always drove for the last 25 years probably to Midtown Atlanta from where they live, which is about 30 or 40 miles every day back and forth in that horrendous traffic, now is able to have his office in their lower level, and he has a very nice office down there, and he can do most all of his work from there. And I think it's working out very well, and it's less stressful. And I think eventually they may go to 2 days in the office and, you know, the rest of the time home or something like that. So for them in Atlanta, it's working out very well.
The organizations have culture, though, and it's hard, I think, to build that if you don't physically get people in the same environment, at least some of the time. And yeah, my guess is that'll be the challenge. Places like Iowa State are going to have to figure that out. I don't think Jeff's on the line. I think this week is he does his big gala thing. He's trying to do that remotely. And I'd be interested in see how he feels that's working. My guess it's not the same thing as having everybody show up in an environment in a, you know, gathering someplace. But that's my own sort of sense of that.
Another challenge, especially when bigger companies like Iowa State does come back to campus and start working again, is do we have the childcare slots for those employees that need it? Because when the pandemic first hit, United Way worked with the medical community to see what we could do in case there was a cry for daycare for those essential workers. Early on, we thought we had about 350 of those workers that were going to need childcare. So we were scrambling to try to figure out how we could provide that childcare for folks in a costly way. And when we finally did have options available, we had about 5 people take us up on those options. And so I know Iowa State was looking at that as well, especially for those school-age learners, and had incorporated with or had partnered with YSS to see if they could do a kids club on campus. And they thought they had, and I can't remember the hundreds, but they had quite a few families saying that yes, if they offered it, they would come. But then when push came to shove, you know, families figured out how to do the remote work learning online from home. And they were working from home as well. So their kids were working from home. So nobody really needed that child care service. So the longer we go, our child care centers are struggling because they don't have that tuition. And, you know, will they be open 6 months from now, 9 months from now, a year from now, when employers are ready to call everybody back to work and say, yeah, you need to be here versus at home. So a lot of things to think about. You don't realize the ripple effect of everything.
Well, you go out into the research park where Kiva has been, you know, remotely doing things. That they built all those buildings. That complex has been sitting there with fundamentally almost nobody in it for whatever, around 9 months into that. And that's got a lot of ramifications. It's
one of the casualties that's shown up is on SciRide, because students not in full class mode, there aren't near as many students using the SciRide buses.
And that's got revenue implications as this all sort of moves its way along. So,
what company was that, Warren? I missed that.
Well, Workiva is it's a software company. It started up out there. They made a policy decision to have basically almost everybody work from home. And so if you go out by there, that set of new buildings sits there with almost nobody in it. And I don't know what their long-term plan is. That you can do software development probably fairly effectively remotely. And so whether they will they had about 1,800 or 2,000 people working out there at one point.
It sure hadn't hurt their stock price.
No, but they build it. It's got recreational facilities and food and all that, and nobody's doing any of that right now. And so, I don't know what their business model will be going forward.
I think it's better to be together though.
True.
Separate.
True.
Well, I've got to drop off, guys, but you keep talking and take notes if there's anything I need to know. But we'll keep doing this. This is a good idea. Thank you, Gene Cressy, for coming up with this idea.
I'll give credit to credit where credit's due. Kristen Pates was the one that had come up with the idea, and I just passed it along. She, however, had an appointment, couldn't do it today, so she felt bad. But I need to sign off too. Thank you all. This was great.
Yep.
Time to go, maybe.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Have a good week, everybody. Stay warm.
Yeah.
Wash your hands or whatever it is we're still doing.
Keep your mask on. All right. Take care.